Flames tore through the old barn like a living thing. Smoke clawed at the sky, thick and black, curling into every corner of the valley. She stood at the edge of the dirt road, her fingers white around the strap of her bag, eyes fixed on the inferno. The heat pressed against her face, but she felt it mostly in her chest, tight and heavy. Someone shouted behind her. She didn't turn. Her stomach knotted, memories gnawing at her. The cowboy, the one she had laughed off years ago. The one she had left standing in the dust. His face flashed in her mind, calm and unreadable. She hated herself for seeing him now, like a ghost, at the edge of the flames. "Did you see him? Did he make it out?" a voice called. It was Mrs. Calloway from the next farm, hair streaked with soot. Her hands shook, clutching a battered tin bucket. She had never looked so small, so frantic. I don't know," she stammered. Her throat was dry. "I didn't see anyone. You saw something." "Everyone saw something." Mrs. Calloway's voice pitched higher. Her eyes darted to the side, to a figure moving near the charred wood. "Don't lie. He was in there. I swear he was." "Stop," she said sharply, turning. She caught sight of the cowboy then. He was at the far edge of the barn, unhurried, scanning the fire, hands on his hips, his hat shadowing his face. The heat didn't touch him. Nothing did. He moved with the calm of someone who owned every second, every smell, every flicker of orange and black. "Look," a man called, pointing. "There he is." God damn it. A dozen neighbors clustered behind her, shouting, running, waving their arms. Water buckets passed from hand to hand, but the flames swallowed everything. She wanted to run, to yell, to turn away, but her feet were nailed to the dirt. Memories pressed in, sharp and pungent like smoke. He had waited. He had watched. He had never begged. She had left. Every choice, every slight, every careless word came back to her in stinging clarity. The cowboy moved closer, stepping through the heat like he owned it. He grabbed a bucket, looked at her, and said nothing. No accusation, no judgment. Just the quiet authority that had once made her chest ache and her resolve falter. "They're getting the feed," someone shouted. "Buckets, come on." She joined them automatically, tossing water onto smoldering hay. But the flames didn't listen. The fire devoured everything, and in her chest, it consumed old regrets she had thought she buried. He leaned against the post, arms crossed. "You all right?" His voice was low, neutral, but it held the weight of all the things she had ignored. I'm fine," she said. She wanted to spit the words at him, to tell him she had moved on, that she had forgotten. But the words stuck in her throat. "You look like hell," he said, half a statement, half a question. "You don't get to say that," she snapped. The words felt weak even as they left her mouth. "You haven't left this place much," he said quietly. "It finds you." She wanted to tell him to go, wanted to scream that it wasn't his business, that the past was gone. But he had always had a way of pressing on her chest, even from a distance, without touching her. She could feel it now in the heat, the smoke, the chaos. "Where's the letter?" Mrs. Calloway yelled again, holding up a charred scrap. "It burned. I saw it fall," someone else added. "It was here then gone. Gone." The cowboy's jaw tightened. He glanced at the burnt paper, then back at her. "That was important," he said. No anger, just acknowledgement. Her fingers itched to snatch it from the ashes, to read the words she had refused years ago. But she didn't. The fire had eaten the barn. It had eaten the hay, the feed, the tools. And it had eaten a piece of her, the piece that could have been different if she had stayed, if she had cared. She could see the ghosts of her choices in every flicker, every roar of flame. "You always pick your battles wrong," he said softly. "You ran when you should have stayed. I did what I had to," she spat. But she knew it wasn't true. She had run because she was scared, because pride made her blind. The neighbors had started murmuring about calling the sheriff, But the cowboy shook his head. "Let it burn," he said. "Nothing left here worth saving right now, no," Mrs. Calloway cried. "The livestock, the feed, the barn. We'll rebuild," he said. His tone was final, unyielding. She swallowed hard, watching him, feeling the old ache that had never left. He had always been unshakable, untouchable, and now, in front of all these people, he commanded even the fire. She stepped closer, closer than she intended, driven by a need she didn't name. You could have, I could have done a lot," he interrupted. "I let it burn because some things have to. Some lessons you don't get to skip." Her chest heaved. She wanted to argue, to beg, to make him care about her mistake. But his eyes were stone, and she remembered the pride she once had. The pride that had sent her running. The fire roared higher, and sparks climbed into the night, dancing like angry stars. The heat made sweat bead on her forehead. Her hands shook as she watched him, watched the control he held without even trying. "You're too late," she whispered, mostly to herself, mostly to the wind that carried smoke into her lungs. "I don't think so," he said quietly. His words weren't gentle. They weren't cruel. They were simply true. He turned back to the fire, tossing another bucket of water, and she realized, with a chill, that she had never left the hold he had over her. Not really, not ever, the barn groaned. Timbers fell. She closed her eyes, wishing it could all be different, wishing she could step back in time and make one correct choice. She opened them. He was still there, calm, unshaken. The fire reflected in his eyes, and she shivered. "I should go," she said. Her voice cracked. "Where?" he asked, and she froze. There was nowhere left to go. The flames consumed the last of the hay, and with it, the illusion that she could ever outrun him, or the past. Smoke wrapped around her like a shroud. She realized she had returned not for the barn, not for the neighbors, not even for the chaos. She had returned for him, and the knowledge made her chest ache in a way the fire could not touch. The night settled, but the heat lingered. Embers drifted like memories, like regrets, like unanswered questions that would follow her long after the flames died. She stepped onto the dry field, boots crunching over brittle grass, and froze. The air smelled of dust and old smoke. Fence posts leaned crookedly, some splintered, the wire sagging like it had given up years ago. She remembered running through this land once, her heels tearing into the soft soil, her laughter cutting through the morning mist. The laughter felt like someone else's now, distant and false. Abandoned horses stood at the far edge, ribs showing, eyes wary. They didn't move when she approached, just watched. Silent witnesses to her return. "You shouldn't be here," a voice called from the tree line. It was Old Man Riggs, leaning on a gnarled walking stick, eyes sharp as a hawk. "This land doesn't like visitors. I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly, keeping her voice steady. She didn't stop walking, but the knots in her stomach pulled tighter. "You left," Riggs said, spitting a little on the ground, "left everything, and now you're back. Ain't nothing good comes from that." "I had reasons," she said, almost a whisper. "Reasons." He barked a short laugh. "You ran because it scared you. That's the truth." She clenched her fists, wanting to argue, but the wind through the grass cut across her skin like small knives. She could hear it carrying whispers, voices that belonged to no one she could see. Memories, maybe. The cowboy's boots on the porch, the weight of his stare. She shivered and shook it off. "Hey," someone called from the barn. A young ranch hand, new, probably afraid of making mistakes. "You're back early. Miss Harper didn't think anyone'd see this place again." "I didn't think I'd come back either," she said, voice flat. She didn't look at him. "I just needed to. What?" he pressed, shifting uneasily. "Face it," she said. But even as the words left her mouth, they felt small and hollow. The wind picked up. rattling the loose panels on the barn and the fence. A horse whinnied sharply, breaking the silence, and she flinched. She remembered nights she had spent out here, hiding in the shadows, watching the cowboy work through the dark. She had wanted to leave him behind, but the land had always whispered back. "You think this place forgives?" Riggs asked again, voice low, almost a growl. "I don't know," she admitted. She kicked at a clump of dirt, scattering dry grass. "Maybe it won't. Maybe it never does." The ranch hand shifted again, glancing to the horizon where a storm seemed to gather in gray patches. "People talk," he said, "about you, about why you left. Don't think anyone's forgotten." "I don't care if they've forgotten," she said sharply. "I'm not here for them." "But you are," he said. His voice trembled slightly. "Otherwise, you'd stay away." She stopped walking and looked at the horses. One stepped forward, hesitant, nostrils flaring. Its ribs showed too clearly in the sunlight. She felt a pang in her chest. They had suffered in her absence, just as she had suffered from leaving. "Go easy on them," Riggs said from behind her, his tone almost cautionary. "They remember too. They remember everything." "I know," she said, and it was the closest she came to confession. The field felt alive with all the things she had ignored, all the things she had run from. Every broken fence post was a reminder. Every wind-whipped blade of grass was a whisper of her guilt. A crow cawed from a distant tree. She flinched and turned to see the cowboy emerging from the far end of the field. He didn't hurry, didn't call her name, just watched. His presence pressed against her like a weight she couldn't lift. "You've been avoiding this," he said finally. His voice was calm, but it cut like glass. "Avoiding everything that matters." "I didn't know it would matter like this," she said quickly, almost pleading. "It always matters," he replied, "even when you're gone." She swallowed hard, keeping her gaze on the ground. The horses shifted uneasily, sensing tension she couldn't name. "You think the land forgives," he said, stepping closer, "but it doesn't. It remembers, and it keeps score." She stopped. Words failed her. The weight of years pressed down. She had wanted to outrun him, the town, herself. Now, standing in this empty field, she realized she couldn't outrun any of it. Riggs spat again. "You hear him? He's right. All of it comes back. Always." "I know," she whispered, more to the wind than to anyone else. The cowboy's eyes softened slightly, just enough to make her heart ache. "You think you can return and make it right with a few words. But it doesn't work like that." "I don't want easy," she said, and she felt the truth in the words. I want to face it." "You'll face it," he said simply. "This land will make sure of it." She nodded, looking out over the field, over the broken fences, over the empty spaces that had once been full of life and laughter. Every step she had taken away from here had led her back to this exact moment, to the echo of her own choices. The wind lifted again, whipping dust into her face, and she blinked against it. The horses shifted, restless. Somewhere in the distance, the barn roof creaked, a warning from memory. Or maybe the house itself. "You'll have to earn it," the cowboy said finally, voice low. "No shortcuts. No easy roads. Not for you. Not for anyone who left." "I understand," she said quietly. The words were almost lost to the wind, but she meant them. Every scar, every regret, every whispered memory had brought her here. The field stretched out before her, dry and unwelcoming, yet alive with old ghosts she couldn't escape. She breathed deep, letting the dust fill her lungs, letting the ache settle in her chest. She had returned. She would face what she had fled, and this time she wouldn't look away. She saw him before he saw her, standing at the edge of the pasture, hat pulled low, shoulders squared, hands resting lightly on the rail of the corral. He didn't move, didn't glance her way, and the air between them felt heavier than the heat rising from the dry ground. Every step she took toward the fence made her stomach tighten, made the distance between them feel smaller and larger at the same time. She remembered the way he had moved years ago, steady, unhurried, like nothing could touch him. That calm authority hadn't left. "You came back," she said softly, unsure if he would hear, unsure if she wanted him to. He didn't answer. His posture didn't change. The hat shadowed his eyes, hiding the expression she ached to read. She swallowed, trying to steady her voice. "You're quiet," he said finally, voice low, deliberate. He didn't turn to face her fully. The words cut the space between them like a knife. "I didn't know what to say," she admitted. The heat of the day pressed against her skin, but she felt cold in her chest. He let the silence stretch, long and unyielding, letting her nerves fray in it. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, boots sinking slightly into the dust. The horses in the corral flicked their ears, restless. Mirroring her tension, "You remember," he said, tone flat, not accusing, not forgiving, just stating. "Of course I remember," she said quickly. "Everything." His gaze stayed on the fence, distant, unbroken. "Everything," he repeated, slower this time, almost tasting the word. "I wanted to forget," she said, finally. "I tried. I ran. I thought you thought wrong," he said, quiet but firm. "Running doesn't change the past." She flinched. It was just a statement, but it landed like a blow. She wanted to speak, to argue, to tell him she had learned, that she had changed. But the weight in his silence pressed her down, made words useless. The wind moved through the dry grass, carrying faint whispers, memories of the land, of nights spent waiting, watching, longing for something she had walked away from. She could feel it in her chest, in the heat, in the dust clinging to her skin. "You always watch," he said. Finally, a step closer, but still not fully toward her. "You always thought distance would protect you?" "It did," she said, voice sharp, almost defensive. "For a while, it didn't," he said. The words were simple, but each one cut through the air. "And it never will." She looked at his hands resting on the rail, relaxed but strong. She remembered the way they had held tools, ropes, everything necessary to control the land he loved. Now, even standing still, they seemed to command more than anyone else could. Her chest ached with the memory of submission, of pride turned to dust. "Why didn't you come after me?" she asked suddenly, words spilling out. Her voice cracked a little. He didn't answer right away. He tipped his head slightly, letting the shadow of the hat fall lower. "Because you had to leave," he said finally. "You made that choice." "I didn't know," she said, and it sounded like an apology, though she hadn't meant it. He exhaled slowly, shoulders easing slightly, but the power remained. "You always know, in the end," he said, "even if it takes years to admit it." The wind picked up again, rattling the fence posts and stirring the dust into her eyes. She blinked, trying to shake off the feeling that everything between them was electric, that every silent second was weighted with what they had lost and what could never return. "You think I haven't noticed?" she asked, forcing a laugh she didn't feel. "That you notice what?" he interrupted, tone flat, sharp. The single word cut her short. She froze, realizing how completely he could command the space without moving a finger. "That everything," she said finally. "The waiting, the watching, the silence." "I do," he said simply. "But noticing isn't the same as forgiving. It never will be." She wanted to step closer, to bridge the gap, to somehow undo the years she had ignored. But her feet stayed planted, heavy. The corral, the fence, the dry grass, all felt like boundaries she wasn't allowed to cross. "You think this is easy for me?" she said, voice low but urgent, coming back here, facing all of this. "You don't know I know enough," he said, short, precise. No anger, no warmth, just the fact that he knew more than she could bear to admit. The horses shifted uneasily again, echoing her restlessness. The sun slid lower in the sky, turning everything golden, then harsh, then shadowed. He didn't move, didn't blink much, didn't speak more. Silence, deliberate and suffocating, wrapped around them both like a fence no one could climb. "I made mistakes," she said finally, the words dragging across her throat. "I know that. But you left," he said, cutting her off. No need to finish. She had already done it. The weight of it hung in the air, heavier than the sun, heavier than the dust. "I'm here now," she whispered, almost to herself. "I can't change the past, but I can face it." He tilted his head slightly, the shadow under his hat hiding his expression, and she realized she would never know what he thought. Not fully. Not here. Not ever. "You'll face it," he said at last, voice steady, deliberate, "whether you want to or not. This land, this life, it doesn't let go easily." She nodded, shoulders tight. The wind carried the sound of the horses' hooves shifting, the faint creak of fence posts, the memory of all she had run from. She took a step back, then forward again, unsure which distance would keep her safe, which would break her. The cowboy didn't move. He didn't invite her. He didn't push her away. He simply existed, still and quiet, a presence that demanded recognition. She swallowed hard and realized, with a chill, that she had never truly left him. Not the man, not the authority, not the silence that could cut sharper than any words. She pushed open the attic door, hinges whining like old teeth. Dust curled in the air, thick and yellowed. Boxes leaned against the wall, some crushed, some barely standing. She didn't want to be here, not really, but something had pulled her, something she had ignored for years. Her fingers brushed over a stack of papers, tied with a fraying ribbon, letters. She recognized the handwriting immediately, sharp, deliberate, patient. She sank to the floor, untied the ribbon, and lifted the first envelope. The paper was fragile, edges darkened with age. She wanted to look away, but curiosity pressed her hands open. "Miss Harper," a voice echoed in her memory. She froze. It wasn't real. Or maybe it was. "Don't leave it there. Don't ignore it," she whispered. I can't." But she did. She always had. The envelope crinkled in her hands as she opened it, and the ink jumped off the page like it had a life of its own. "I was thinking of you," the words read. Simple, steady, and crushing. She remembered the night he had written this. He had stood by the corral, hat low, boots caked with mud, and waited for her answer. She had laughed and walked away. "You could have said something," she whispered aloud, though she knew he wasn't there. Her voice cracked, small and bitter. "You left," the imagined voice replied softly. "I waited." Her hands shook as she lifted the next letter. "I was afraid," she admitted, almost choking. "I didn't know how to face you, how to face myself." "And so you ran," he said, tone calm, accusatory, neither angry nor forgiving. "You ran and left me nothing." She closed her eyes and pressed the letter to her chest. Her pride stung, sharper than any lash, sharper than any word he had spoken. Every line tore at her, exposing the careful walls she had built. She remembered the nights she had ignored the calls, the letters, the patience, and the quiet expectation he had held for her. "You always think you're clever," she muttered. "Running changes nothing." "It doesn't," the voice said. "Not for me. Not for this land. Not for what you left behind." She sank lower, reading on. Pressed flowers fell from the envelopes, brown and fragile. Memories unfolded with every word. "I wanted to tell you everything," he wrote. "Everything I felt. But you weren't ready, and I couldn't wait forever." Her eyes blurred. "I wasn't ready," she said aloud. "I thought I was. I thought I could do it alone." "You never could," the voice whispered, "and neither could I. That's why we're here now, facing what we should have faced years ago." She picked up another letter, the handwriting elegant, patient. I tried to reach you, she read, voice shaking. I wrote every day. I waited. I didn't let pride stop me. I didn't let fear stop me. But you walked away, and I had to keep standing. Tears pricked her eyes. She gritted her teeth. You? You shouldn't have waited, she said, more to herself than to the ghost of him. I wasn't worth it then. You were, he said, imagined, yet sharp, and you are. You just didn't see it. She swallowed hard and opened the final letter. The paper crumbled slightly under her fingers. Ink-stained words spoke to her across the years. I'll wait as long as it takes, he wrote. But I won't beg. You have to come back on your own. You have to face what you did. She pressed the letter to her lips. I should have come back sooner, she admitted. I should have read them. I should have. You didn't, the voice said softly, deliberately. And now you have to live with that. The wind outside rattled the shutters. The attic felt alive with memory, with whispers, with judgment. She had thought letters were harmless, forgotten words, ink on paper. But now she saw they were alive, carrying the weight of truth, carrying the proof of what she had avoided. I was proud, she whispered. I didn't want to be weak. And that pride cost you everything, he said. The time, the chance, the trust. You can't undo it. You can only face it. Her hands trembled. She clutched the letters, pressed the flowers to her chest, and felt the years fold in on themselves. Every choice, every mistake, every moment she had ignored him sat heavy against her ribcage. You thought leaving was freedom, the imagined voice said. But it wasn't. It was a chain. And now, you feel it. I do, she admitted. Every day. Her lips trembled. Every single day. The letters smelled of dust, of ink, of memory. She could feel the weight of each word, each line, like a hand on her shoulder she couldn't shake. Why didn't I read these? She asked, more to herself than to him. Why didn't I care? Because pride makes fools of us all, the voice said, and fear makes them run. But you're here now. That matters. She exhaled slowly. I'm here. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the empty attic like a confession. The sun cut through a crack in the boards, lighting the letters, the flowers, the fading ink. She traced the lines with a trembling finger, memorizing each word, each intent, each patience-filled sentence. I can't change the past, she said. But I can face it. I have to. Yes, the voice said, and that's the only way forward. The attic settled around her, quiet, except for the wind. Dust drifted in sunbeams, falling onto the letters she held. For the first time in years, she felt the weight shift, the past pressing down but no longer suffocating. She understood what she had ignored, what she had avoided, and what she must now confront. The letters were charred by memory, faded by time, but their truth was undeniable. She folded them carefully, pressed the flowers between the pages, and rose to her feet. Every step down the attic stairs felt heavier, wiser. Every creak of wood underfoot echoed like a warning, a promise, a reminder. She had faced the letters she didn't open. Now, the next step would be facing him. The sheriff's office smelled of old leather, gun oil, and sun-baked dust. She stepped inside, boots scraping against the wooden floor. He was behind the desk, badge catching the late afternoon light, one hand resting lightly on his holster. He didn't look up at first, just tapped a pen against the worn surface. Slow and deliberate. You came back, he said finally, voice low, almost cautious. Didn't expect that. I had to, she said. Her voice was flat, hiding the tremor in her chest. Things are changing. He leaned back in the chair, eyes narrowing. You mean him? The cowboy. Yes, she said, unwilling to look away. Her stomach tightened. I didn't realize. How much? He tapped the desk again, the sound sharp. You don't see it yet, but it's bigger than anyone around here wants to admit. Bigger than me, bigger than the council, bigger than old families holding grudges. She stopped herself. I don't understand. What do you mean? He stood slowly, fingers brushing the badge pinned to his chest. He's got control in ways you can't imagine. People listen. People obey, quietly, or they disappear from sight. Disappear? She asked sharply. Her voice caught. What do you mean? You'll see, he said, calm but hard. I've seen it before. Men and women who thought they could resist, they regret it. His hand lingered near the holster, just enough to make her heart skip. I'm warning you, don't get in his way. I'm not trying to, she started. You will, he interrupted, voice dropping. Because the land, the town, even the rules don't work the same once he's in charge. He doesn't need to shout. You'll feel it in the small things, the quiet rules, the way people avoid your eyes. Her hands clenched. And if I don't leave? He didn't smile, didn't flinch. Then you'll find out exactly how heavy silence can be. She swallowed hard. Why tell me this? Because someone has to, he said. Because you're stubborn enough to walk back into it. Because I can't stop him, and you might not either. She glanced around the office, noticing the faded wanted posters, the old revolver mounted above the desk, the shadows stretching along the walls. Everything felt small, compared to him. Everything would bend to his will soon enough. You don't know him, she whispered. You don't know what he'll do. He shook his head slowly. I know enough. Enough to warn you. Enough to tell you that under that calm, under that quiet, there's a man who doesn't forget, doesn't forgive, doesn't lose. I know, she said. She could feel it in her chest, the years of avoidance, the letters, the silence, the power he held without lifting a finger. The sheriff sighed, leaning back against the desk. You think he's just a cowboy? Someone to brush off, someone to outwait. You're wrong. He's already boss. Not because he claimed it, but because everyone else bent before he did. Boss of what? She asked, voice low. Everything, he said. The council, the ranches, the fields, even the law in corners you don't see. He moves quietly, makes alliances, breaks them, and no one dares question it. She pressed her fingers to the table, steadying herself. And you? You can't stop him. I can't, he admitted. Not with what he's built, not with who he is. And you need to understand that before you step any closer. She nodded, though it didn't feel like understanding. It felt like the first taste of fear, bitter and metallic, crawling in her veins. He's not a man to confront openly, the sheriff said. Not yet. Not without a plan. Not without knowing what he's willing to burn to win. I don't want to confront him, she said quickly, almost desperate. I need to survive. To understand. Understanding won't save you, he said flatly. Only awareness. Only knowing where the lines are and whether you dare cross them. She swallowed hard. And if I do, then you'll see what he does to those who underestimate him, he said. His voice dropped, softer but heavier. And you'll wish you'd listened when I warned you. The room went quiet. The sunlight fell in stripes across the floorboards, lighting the dust motes that hung in the air like tiny specters. She could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating, pressing her chest down. Every instinct told her to leave, to run, but she couldn't. Not yet. You understand now, the sheriff said finally. This isn't a man you can fight with words, or pride, or old grudges. This is a force. Quiet, precise, deadly if ignored. I understand, she whispered, though the words felt fragile. Good, he said, tipping his hat slightly. Remember this. Keep your head low, keep your eyes open, and for God's sake, keep your pride in check. She nodded again, swallowing the weight in her throat. He watched her for a moment, hand still hovering near the holster, then sat back. letting the room breathe again. She stepped toward the door. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You're welcome," he said. "Now go. Go before curiosity or courage makes a fool of you. You'll need both to survive what's coming." She opened the door and stepped outside. The sun had begun to lower, shadows stretching long across the dirt road. She could feel the power of the cowboy already reaching, like a tide pulling at everything around him. The sheriff's warning rang in her ears, sharper than any sound, "Don't get in his way," and she knew, with a sudden clarity, that she hadn't just returned to a place. She had returned to a world already reshaped, already controlled, already under his quiet, unstoppable rule. The ranch gate swung open, creaking on worn hinges. She stood just beyond them, boots sinking into dust, and watched him move among the horses. His hands were steady on the reins, eyes scanning every animal, every worker, every corner of the corral. The rising sun hit the dust in shafts of orange, lighting him like a man already larger than the land itself. Every movement was deliberate, precise, and commanding. "Easy now," he called to a young rider, struggling with a stubborn stallion. His voice carried across the corral, calm but sharp, and the rider froze, obeying without question. "Heel it back. Don't pull, let it sense you." "Yes, sir," the boy muttered, tension gripping him. She swallowed, heart tight. The cowboy she had once scorned now held authority like it was a living thing, something the land itself obeyed. She could see the respect in every eye, the quiet fear that traced every body posture, every lowered gaze. She remembered him standing still outside her door, hat low, waiting for her answer years ago. That stillness had become a presence she couldn't ignore now. "Bring the mares in first," he said, turning to a ranch hand. His words were clipped, precise, step lively. "Don't let them break formation." "Yes, boss," the man said, moving quickly. She stepped closer, boots crunching over the gravel, and he didn't look at her. Her throat tightened. You've changed everything," she said, voice low but insistent. He didn't answer immediately. He just adjusted his hat, shoulders squared. "Everything," he confirmed finally, tone flat, "and I'll change more if I have to." Her hands clenched. "I didn't expect this," she admitted. "I didn't think it would be like this." "You didn't think at all," he said, turning to face her at last. His eyes were steady, unflinching, the weight of command pressing down like a storm. "You ran. You avoided. And now you're back. Watch closely. Learn. I'm not here to," she began, but the words fell away. "You are?" he said simply. "You're here, and you're watching. That's enough to make you part of it." Horses stamped and snorted as a mare broke formation. He moved like a shadow, stepping in, placing his hands on the animal's flanks, guiding it back into line without raising his voice more than a whisper. The workers followed silently, every motion echoing respect, fear, and obedience. She could feel it, the magnetic control he wielded, not with threats, but with presence. "You see that?" he asked, voice low, but carrying over the corral. "Not force, not anger. Respect earns compliance. Fear cements it. And you don't get it yet." "I'm trying," she said quickly, defensive. "I'm watching. I'm learning." You think watching is enough," he interrupted, voice rising slightly. "You think understanding comes from distance. It doesn't. It comes from stepping in, taking responsibility, or from being crushed by it." "I know," she said, and she did. The weight of his rise, the power in his calm authority, pressed down on her chest. She had thought she could ignore it, outwit it, avoid it. Now she saw that she had been naive. He walked past her, boots scuffing gravel, hands brushing against the gates, surveying the land he had claimed, the people he now commanded. "These gates," he said, motioning toward the corral, "don't open for anyone unless they earn it. These horses," he continued, stopping mid-step, "don't respect weakness. Neither do people. Remember that. Yes, sir, she said, barely audible, guilt pressing at her ribs. She had run when she should have stayed. She had ignored letters, moments, chances, and now she felt the full scale of what she had abandoned. Step back, he said, turning sharply. Let me work. Let them see you observe, but don't interfere. Your presence distracts. Control isn't for spectators. She obeyed, stepping back, heart thudding. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not loud enough for him, but enough to hear herself. Apologies don't earn respect, he said without turning. Actions do. Words are dust. A young girl fumbled with a bridle, and he was there, correcting her with a firm touch. A quiet command, a single glance that straightened her spine instantly. She flinched at the power in that simple act. Every command, every movement, carried weight she hadn't seen before. She felt herself shrinking in comparison, even as the sun climbed higher, highlighting the dust. The corral, the man who had become an authority she couldn't ignore. You see the shift? He asked finally, voice low, cutting through the rising clamor of the ranch. Power is earned quietly. Fear is respected openly. People obey because they know the consequences of failing. You'll need to understand that if you hope to survive here. I understand, she said, voice tight. She did, though understanding didn't make it any easier. The realization that he had risen while she had fled made the years ache in her chest. He tipped his hat slightly, surveying the corral one last time. Good watch. Learn, but don't mistake your guilt for knowledge. That comes from action, from presence, from command, something you've avoided until now. She nodded again, pressing her hands into her thighs. The horses shifted, stamping, kicking lightly. The workers followed his lead without hesitation. She could feel the hierarchy, the unspoken rules, the invisible chains of authority he now carried effortlessly. She had left a world she thought she understood. He had rebuilt it entirely, with patience, with skill, and with quiet ruthlessness. And she had returned to witness it all. She stepped into the yard, boots crunching against gravel that had long since lost its sharpness. The old well sat at the center, rim chipped, stones etched with initials faded almost beyond recognition. She knelt beside it, fingers tracing the rough edges. Water pooled at the bottom, still and dark, reflecting the sky like a mirror she wasn't ready to meet. Every memory she had buried rose with it, thick and heavy. You shouldn't be here, a voice said from the edge of the yard. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. The cowboy stood there, hands on his hips, hat low, eyes scanning the well as though it held answers he already knew. I had to come, she said, voice trembling. I need to see. You always do, he said, stepping closer. His boots stirred the dust, soft and deliberate. See what, exactly? What we lost, she whispered. What I ran from. You ran, he said, flat, precise, and left more than memories behind. I know, she admitted, eyes on the water, not daring to meet him. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to face myself. Face it now, he said, voice sharp, or stop pretending like these stones mean nothing. He gestured toward the carved initials. They're still here, marked, waiting. I remember, she said, fingers tracing a half-erased heart. I remember everything. The fights, the silence, the promises I broke, and the ones you ignored, he added, tone low, but cutting. The letters, the nights you left the porch empty. You thought absence made it easier. It didn't. She swallowed hard. I was afraid. Afraid of what I couldn't fix. Afraid of losing control. You lost it anyway, he said, stepping closer, eyes like flint. You lost it the day you walked away. This well, these stones, the yard, they remember better than you ever did. I didn't think about them, she said, voice rising. I thought leaving would bury the pain. I thought I could outrun it. You can't outrun yourself, he said, blunt. And you can't outrun me. Not here. Not ever. She pressed her palms against the cold stone, letting the water's reflection ripple with the weight of her shame. Do you hate me? She asked, voice barely audible. I don't hate, he said. I remember, and remembering is heavier than hate. Remembering makes you accountable. Her fingers clenched the edge of the well. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to stay, how to fight, how to speak without breaking everything. You could have tried, he said, stepping closer, voice firm. Even a little effort would have mattered. But you ran. You always run when things get hard. I wasn't ready, she admitted, shoulders slumping. I thought time would make it easier. That running would save me. It didn't, he said, quiet but unyielding. It never saves anyone. And now you're here, and you see the cost. She looked down at the water, seeing herself reflected beside the sky. The reflection was fractured by ripples, a distorted version of who she had been, who she still was. I see it, she whispered. I see it all. The mistakes, the loss, the silence I caused. Good, he said, voice sharp. See it? Feel it. Let it sink. But don't think seeing it makes it right. It doesn't, I know, she said. Her voice was soft, strained. I have to face it. I have to accept it. You have to, he said, stepping back slightly, letting the distance remind her who held the ground, who held the rules. Otherwise, it will follow you. It always does. She traced a carved initial with a finger. The stone was rough, cold, unyielding. I buried it all, she whispered. All the hurt, all the shame. I thought forgetting would heal me. Forgetting doesn't heal, he said. It waits, always. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. And now, I have to live with it, with all of it. I can't ignore it anymore. No, he said. You can't, not here. Not with me. Not with what we left behind. A breeze moved through the yard, lifting dust, carrying the faint scent of old wood and iron. The water rippled again, reflecting their faces side by side, young and scarred, guilty and vigilant. She traced the initials once more, memorizing them, letting the weight of each carved mark sink into her bones. I see why you warned me, she said finally, voice quiet. Why the letters, the silence, the presence, why everything mattered. You should have stayed, he said, stepping close enough for her to feel the heat from his body, the authority that hadn't dimmed with time. Even if you couldn't fix it all. Even if you were scared. I didn't know how, she said, her voice cracked, tears pricking at her eyes. I wasn't ready. I thought running would make it easier. You learned the hard way, he said, and now you know. That's what matters. That's why you're here. Don't forget it again. She pressed her hands to the edge of the well, letting the stone cool her palms. I won't, she whispered. I see it now. I can't unsee it. I won't. He nodded once, sharply, as if sealing the unspoken understanding. Good, then we move forward. Not in silence, not in denial, but together, or apart. You choose, but you know the stakes. She inhaled, tasting dust and sunlight, guilt and clarity. I choose to face it, she said. No more running. The reflection in the water rippled once more, and she saw herself clearly now flawed, trembling, but present. And for the first time in years, she felt the weight of the past settle, not as chains, but as a lesson carved in stone, as enduring as the well itself. The dining room smelled of roasted meat and stale whiskey. Candles flickered across the polished wood, casting shadows that stretched toward the corners like uninvited guests. She stepped inside, noticing empty chairs at the table, intentional gaps left by families unwilling to sit too close. The cowboy was already there, seated at the head, hands resting lightly on the table, posture straight, eyes scanning everyone like a man who owned not just the room, but the air in it. "Sit," he said softly, and the command hung in the room like a weight. No one moved first. She slid into the seat beside him, fingers brushing the table's edge. The other families shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between him and her, measuring reactions, guessing allegiances. "You brought her back," one older man said finally, voice tight. "Thought she'd learned her lesson." "She did," the cowboy said, calm eyes locked on the man, not on her. "She learned respect, something long overdue." "She thinks she can step into this world again?" a woman asked, hand clenching a fork, after walking away. "She doesn't think," he said evenly. "She acts. That's different." The clink of silverware against plates punctuated the tension. Each movement around the table seemed deliberate, calculated. No one dared speak unless spoken to. "You changed," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "Everyone listens. No one argues." "They do argue," he said, quietly, "where it doesn't matter, where it doesn't threaten the outcome." "And you?" she asked. "Do you ever falter?" "Falter." His voice was low, almost amused. "Not in front of them. Not here. The moment I falter, they rise. I can't let that happen. Can't anymore." The eldest son of another family leaned forward, voice sharp. "You claim leadership, but this is still a shared table. You can't control everything." "Control," he said, eyes narrowing just slightly, "isn't what you think it is. It's not forcing obedience. It's creating certainty. People act differently when they know the rules, and the rules are mine to enforce." She felt the shift in her chest, the old arrogance she once carried, hollow and useless now. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of his calm, the certainty of his authority, carried farther than any shout could. "You were gone," another voice said, younger, tense. "Years gone, and now you come back claiming—" "I don't claim," he interrupted, voice cutting across the table. "I earned. What I earned isn't a favor. It isn't a title. It's recognition. Something your families will understand, whether they like it or not." Silence fell, heavy, the kind that pressed into ribs and froze tongues. Only the faint clatter of forks on plates broke it. She realized, then, that her old pride, her old confidence, had no place here anymore. Not at this table, not anywhere near him. "You brought her back," the eldest man said again, quieter this time, almost a confession. "Do you intend to forgive, or to remind us all of debts owed?" "Neither," the cowboy said, tone flat. "I bring her back because she belongs here, because her presence matters more than your grudges, and because I decide who matters here." A sharp intake of breath from the woman across the table. "And if she fails, if she doesn't measure up?" "She won't fail," he said, voice soft but final. "Not because I carry her, but because she's learned. She's watched. She's felt what it means to be without control. That education is enough." She looked down at her plate, fingers tightening around her fork. She had thought she understood the weight of the past, the power she had once wielded, the influence she could command. Sitting here, under the quiet scrutiny of the cowboy, and the lingering eyes of families she had once dismissed, she knew she had been naive. "Do you always intimidate with silence?" she asked, voice low, trembling slightly. "It's more effective than noise," he said. "Noise reveals weakness. Silence holds power." The eldest man shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the empty chairs, the subtle gaps, the spacing that spoke louder than any words. "We've heard rumors," he said, voice tight, "about your methods, about how you've handled disputes. They're true," he said, "and they will continue to be true. But not here. Not at this table. Here, we speak with civility, with respect, and we understand the consequences of stepping out of line." She swallowed, realizing the invisible lines had been redrawn. Her past actions, her past arrogance, had no leverage here. She had to rebuild not with words, not with charm, but with presence, with patience, with acknowledgement of a power she could no longer ignore. I see it, she whispered, almost to herself. I see the rules now. You do, he said, and that matters, more than pride, more than history, more than your fear of facing me. Another woman at the table spoke, tone clipped, veiled. And what of the debts we carry? The grudges passed down. They remain, he said, but only as reminders, not as obstacles, not when faced with clarity. We honor history, yes, but it does not dictate our actions today. That's power. She lifted her eyes, meeting his briefly, seeing the calm dominance reflected in the rising candlelight. He didn't need to assert it with force. The weight of his authority filled every corner, every glance, every pause in conversation. Her old self, confident and arrogant, was obsolete. The clinking of silverware stopped as he raised his glass slightly, a small, precise gesture that commanded attention without demanding it. To clarity, he said quietly, to understanding, and to those who learn to walk within it. She echoed the motion, feeling the hollow ache of humility, the sharp edge of respect, and the unshakable realization that the world she had left had been reshaped entirely under his quiet control, and she had returned to witness it. The backwoods were quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against ears until every creak of timber and rustle of leaves sounded like an accusation. She followed the narrow dirt path, boots sinking slightly in soft earth, and found the cemetery tucked between gnarled oaks, gravestones crooked and half swallowed by moss. Faded initials and dates peeked through, worn by years and neglect. Each stone a fragment of memory she had tried to avoid. You come here often? His voice broke the silence. She hadn't noticed him step out of the shadows. Hat low, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the ground with a care that suggested reverence more than fear. Not since I left, she said, voice tight. I didn't want to remember. You can't run from it, he said simply, stepping closer. Not the people, not the past, not the debts. They follow, whether you look or not. She traced a small carved cross, fingers lingering on the stone. I thought burying it all hurts. Mistakes silence it would stay buried. I was wrong. Burying doesn't erase, he said. It just waits for someone brave enough to dig it up. Brave. She scoffed softly, looking at him. I'm not sure I'm brave enough. You're already here, he said. That counts for more than words. He moved to another stone, brushing moss aside with careful fingers. Family doesn't forgive easily, and they don't forget. You should know that. I know, she whispered. I left them. I left everyone, and they're still here, he said, voice low, watching, waiting, expecting. You think absence erased responsibility. It doesn't. Responsibility clings. She knelt beside a stone with initials nearly lost to weather, tracing the letters. I didn't. I couldn't. I thought. Thoughts are useless here, he interrupted, sharp but quiet. Action counts. Presence, loyalty, choices. A crow cawed from the treetops. She flinched, hearing the hollow echo in the clearing. Loyalty, she said, voice trembling. I don't know if I deserve it anymore. He stepped closer, shadow falling over her hands. Deserve doesn't matter. You either honor it, or you fail. And failure isn't forgiven easily. She looked up, meeting his eyes, seeing the quiet certainty there, a weight she could feel pressing in the chest. And if I fail? You won't, he said, toned flat, unwavering. Because you've seen enough, felt enough. You understand what's at stake. That's enough to guide you. A stone beside hers bore a small bouquet, dried but carefully arranged. She reached out, brushing petals with fingertips. I should have cared sooner, she whispered. I ignored everything. And now? He asked, voice deliberate. Now? I want to do right, she said, voice raw. I want to face it, even if it hurts. Even if it's too late for some things. Too late isn't the same as useless, he said. You can't change what's gone, but you can honor it. You can act for what remains. That's loyalty. That's morality. That's what matters. She exhaled sharply, letting the weight of his words settle. Every moss-covered stone, every weathered cross, every offering left on the graves spoke of lives that had passed, of promises broken, of lessons carved in stone in silence. She had ignored them once. She couldn't again. You see it then? He said quietly, crouching beside her, fingers brushing a carved date. You understand what this place asks of you. Loyalty isn't given lightly. Respect isn't a gift. And honor, it's earned, every day, in every choice. I see it, she whispered, and I want to do right. I'll try, at least. He straightened, letting his shadow stretch across the clearing. Trying isn't enough, he said. Doing is, but knowing the stakes, feeling the weight, that's half the battle. You're ready for the other half. A rustle in the underbrush made them both pause. A deer broke the silence, bounding through the trees, disappearing into shadow. She shivered, feeling the cold bite of wind, the presence of life and memory, intertwined. All of this. It's heavy, she said softly. It should be, he replied. Heavy keeps you honest. Lightness leads to mistakes, to forgetting, to failing the ones who can't speak anymore. She knelt longer, letting fingers brush across stones, reading initials, murmuring names she barely remembered. I can't fix everything, she said. I know that, but I can honor it. I can try, and that's enough, he said quietly. For now, keep walking, keep choosing, and keep remembering. That's all that matters. The wind moved through the clearing, carrying leaves and dust, whispering across stones that had borne witness to generations. She rose slowly, brushing soil from her knees, and turned to face him. The sun filtered through the trees, illuminating his profile, calm and unyielding. She realized, finally, that his resolve, his loyalty, and his quiet authority were as enduring as these graves. I'll remember, she said, voice steady. I won't forget again. You better not, he said, stepping back, hands on his hips, hat low. Because history waits for no one, and those who ignore it end up buried beneath it. She nodded, eyes sweeping the cemetery one last time, seeing each stone, each offering, each silent testament. She felt the weight of legacy, the sting of old wounds, and the clarity of purpose that came from knowing what mattered most. And as they turned to leave, the backwoods seemed quieter, but not empty. The graves, weathered and moss-covered, bore witness, and she knew, finally, that the cowboy's loyalty, his unwavering resolve, and her own path forward would be bound by the choices made here, amid the stones and the shadows. The office smelled of dust, leather, and old paper. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching motes of dust that hung like suspended judgment. She stepped inside, boots echoing against the worn wooden floor. Papers were scattered across the desk, some curling at the edges from heat, others pinned down by a heavy brass paperweight. He was there, seated behind the desk, hat removed, fingers steepled, eyes scanning her like he had been expecting this moment for years. You came, he said, voice calm, precise, carrying an edge that made her chest tighten. I had to, she said, closing the door behind her. I can't keep running from this. From you. Running. His eyes flicked to the papers. You've been running since the first time I tried to reach you. Nothing's changed, except now, you're cornered by your own pride. I'm not cornered, she said, though her voice wavered. I'm confronting it. Confronting you. Good, he said, leaning back, hands moving to rest on scattered paperwork. Because I've been waiting for this, for you to finally say something worth hearing. I'm here, she said, stepping closer, fingers brushing the edge of the desk. I've seen what you've built, what you've become, and I thought I knew you. I was wrong. Wrong about me? He asked, voice low, sharp. You think the man I am now is the same man you once thought you knew. That's the mistake. I thought I understood, she said, voice quickening, emotion spilling over. I thought you were the same cowboy, the one I didn't appreciate. You thought wrong, he interrupted, slamming a fist lightly against the desk. The papers jumped, some sliding to the floor. I'm not the man you scorned. I'm what I needed to be, what I had to become, and that's not your world anymore. Her hands trembled as she reached for a folder, lifting it, letting the papers shuffle beneath her touch. And I thought I could step back in, fix things, make amends. You can't fix what you ignored, he said, leaning forward, eyes locking onto hers. You left, and leaving has consequences. You don't get to waltz back and demand the same respect you once scorned. I never demanded anything, she said, voice rising, rapid fire now. I wanted to understand, to be honest, to face the mistakes I made. Honesty without accountability means nothing, he shot back, voice sharp. You can speak until your throat hurts, but if you don't act, it's empty words, and empty words are worthless here. You think I haven't tried? She asked, cutting, quick. Every day since I left, I've thought of this moment, of saying the right thing, of being the woman I should have been, and you, and I. His voice rose, quick, controlled but fierce. I became what I needed. I took control. I endured what you couldn't. And now you step in, thinking your regrets hold weight? They do, she snapped, voice trembling. They do, because I faced them. I'm here. Isn't that proof? Isn't that enough to show I care? Care? He said, one eyebrow raised, the sunlight catching the hard lines of his face. You care now. You didn't then. Your absence spoke louder than any confession ever could. You weren't just careless. You were gone. And that leaves scars deeper than words can reach. She slammed the folder onto the desk, scattering papers again. And what about you? You weren't the same either. You hardened. You changed. I had to. He snapped, voice loud, cutting through the tension. Every day I waited for you, I became stronger, smarter, more ruthless. If I hadn't, none of this would exist. And now, if you expect me to be soft, you're wrong. A silence fell, jagged and electric, broken only by the creak of floorboards as she shifted, chest heaving. I don't expect softness, she said finally, voice low, trembling. I don't know what I expect. I need to face you, to see the truth of what's happened, between us, between me and everything I left behind. Truth, he asked, voice sharp, controlled. Truth is messy. Truth doesn't excuse absence or arrogance. Truth doesn't wait for your apologies. I'm not apologizing, she said, quick and cutting. I'm telling you, I'm here. That I won't run anymore. That I see it now. That I feel it. That you. His voice cut across hers, stopping the rush. That you understand you're small in this world you abandoned. That you realize what loyalty costs. What power requires. I do, she said, voice breaking, rapid, overlapping with the tension in his own words. I understand more than you think, and I'm willing to try. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, letting the weight of his stare sink into her. Trying doesn't erase the past, he said softly, but the edge was still there. But it's the first step. First steps matter. If you can keep walking without faltering, without excuses. I can, she whispered, breath trembling. I'll walk. I'll face it. Every day. With you, or with myself. But I won't run. Good, he said finally, standing, hat back in hand, sunlight catching the rim. Then start here. Start now. Face the weight, or it'll crush you. This office, this ranch, this life, it doesn't forgive the hesitant. It doesn't forgive the weak. Are you ready for that? She swallowed hard, nodding once, firmly. I am. I won't fail again. He studied her for a long moment, the fading sunlight catching the sharp angles of his face. Then he nodded, slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. Then we begin, he said, voice quiet, but firm. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. And in that small, cluttered office, amid scattered paperwork and fading sunlight, she realized he wasn't the man she had once known. He was stronger, sharper, unyielding. And she finally was ready to face him, face herself, and face the consequences of the choices she had made. The barn smelled of old hay, smoke, and charred wood. The evening sun slanted through the gaps in the walls, streaks of gold hitting dust motes that hung like tiny specters. She held the torch tightly, fingers white against the handle, letters in her other hand. Each one bore words she had ignored years ago, lines she had refused to read, pieces of a past she had tried to erase. The fire pit at the center of the barn was ready. She hesitated, heart hammering, unsure if this act would free her or consume her entirely. You don't have to do this, he said from the doorway. Calm, steady. His hat was off, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes sharp but not angry. You think burning paper erases the past. It doesn't. You know that. I need to, she said, voice tight, trembling. I can't. I can't keep holding on. Every word, every line. It's like a weight on my chest. I have to let it go. You're not letting it go, he said, stepping closer, boots quiet against the wooden floor. You're testing yourself, seeing if fire can make you strong enough to face what you've ignored. I need strength, she said, eyes on the fire pit, torch hovering over the stack of letters. I can't do it anymore. Without this, without controlling something, anything, for once. You think control comes from fire? He asked, voice measured, but edged. Control comes from choice, from knowing when to hold, when to release. Not from destruction. She clenched the torch tighter, jaw set. This is my choice. My release? He moved closer, hand brushing against a plank of the barn wall as he leaned. Release is fine, but not like this. You think burning paper heals regret? It doesn't. Facing it does. Living with it does. Owning it does. You want to test fire, fine, but remember it tests you more than it frees you. She swallowed, letting the words hang in the smoky light. I'm ready to be tested, she said, lighting the torch and letting the flame lick the letters. The edges curled instantly, blackening, smoke rising in spirals. She dropped them into the fire pit, watching them catch, crackle, and twist into ash. You're shaking, he said quietly. And you're scared? Good. That's what it should feel like. Power isn't a gift. It's earned in fear, in vulnerability, in understanding that the world doesn't bow to you. I know, she whispered. I know now. I'm done pretending, done running. Then stand there, he said, tone calm, almost tender, and let it burn. Watch it, feel it. Understand that strength isn't the fire in your hands. It's what you do after the fire dies. Her eyes tracked the flames, letters turning to ash, smoke curling around her face. I see it, she said. I feel it, the weight, the release, and yet, the knowing that it's not enough. Nothing is enough, he said, voice steady. Not yet, but this is a start. You're choosing action over denial. That's the difference. The flames crackled louder, and she felt her pulse in her ears, heat washing over her face. And you, she said, voice rising slightly. You never lose control. You always stand there.com, like nothing can touch you. Not true, he said, stepping closer to stand beside her. Everything touches me. Everything shapes me. but I don't let it dictate my choices. That's the difference. You're learning it now. Slowly. I thought I knew you, she said, voice quick, emotions spilling out, almost overlapping his measured calm. I thought I understood you, but I see now. I see your control, and it terrifies me. Terrified is good, he said. It keeps you honest. It keeps you careful. It keeps you learning. She dropped another handful of letters into the fire pit. The flames roared, black smoke curling toward the rafters. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to face you. Face this, face myself. And it's harder than I imagined. It should be, he said quietly. Nothing worth facing is easy. Fear, fire, regret, they test you. They test your resolve. And you're being tested right now. She let the torch fall to the side, ash scattering around her boots. I can't control the past, she admitted, voice trembling. I can't, not anymore, but I can decide what to do next. With you, with everything I've left behind. Good, he said, tone softening slightly, almost approving. Decisions matter. You've burned the letters. That's symbolic. But the real work begins now. Every choice after this is proof. Proof that fire alone doesn't define you. You do, I understand, she whispered, heat from the flames washing over her. I do, and I won't. I won't let it break me. You're not broken, he said, voice firm but calm. You're bending. That's different. Bending without snapping, without losing yourself, that's resilience. That's strength. And now, you have to walk forward with it. She watched the last of the letters turn to ash, smoke rising to meet the slanting sunlight. I'll walk, she said, voice low but steady. And I'll keep walking, even when it's hard, even when it scares me. He nodded, hat back in hand, shadows stretching long across the floor. Then the fire did its job, not by burning the past, but by proving you can face it. That's control. That's power. That's survival. And as the smoke curled up, carrying ashes and memories into the dusk, she realized it wasn't the fire that mattered. It was the courage to stand in it, to surrender, to accept both weakness and strength, and to keep moving forward in a world where the cowboy's calm dominance and her own will would shape every step she took next. The sun hung low over the ranch, painting the horizon in molten gold and deepening shadows. The corral was empty, except for a few restless horses, their hooves scraping against dry earth. She stood at the edge of the fence, hands gripping the worn wood, eyes tracing the distant hills. Everything felt larger than herself, timeless and unyielding. A landscape of memory and power she had tried to outrun. He approached slowly from the barn, boots stirring small clouds of dust. His hat was tilted back, hands clasped loosely in front of him. He didn't speak at first, letting her take in the full weight of the scene, letting her own silence stretch thin and taut. She felt the pull of his presence, not threatening but undeniable. Control radiated from him without effort, a quiet authority that made every decision, every hesitation, every unspoken word, sharp and visible. I see you, he said finally, voice low, carrying across the empty yard. Not accusation, not question, just a statement that hung like a judgment she had earned. I see it too, she said, voice trembling, fast. Everything I left behind, everything I ignored, it's all here, and I see you. Not who I thought you were, but who you are now. He stepped closer, shadows stretching toward her, yet he didn't press, didn't demand. It's not easy, he said quietly, to see what's real, to accept it. Most turn away. Most pretend they're untouchable. Not you. I'm tired of pretending, she said, voice quick, almost overlapping his measured calm. Tired of thinking I could control it. Control you. Control what happened. Control anything. I can't. No, he said softly, almost kindly. You can't control it, but you can choose how to live with it, how to carry it. That's strength, that's dignity, and you have it, whether you know it yet or not. She let the words sink, feeling the air hum between them. I never wanted to admit it, she said rapid fire, but I was wrong. About everything. About how I left. About how I thought I could. Outsmart life. Outsmart you. You didn't outsmart anything, he said. Calm, measured, letting the weight of the truth settle without judgment. You ran, and you learned. That's what matters. Not the past, but the choice you make now. Right here, right now. She glanced down at her hands, roughened from years of small tasks, hands that had carried shame and regret like stones. I don't know what choice looks like anymore, she whispered. Everything I touch seems empty, hollow, except this, except you, except the fact that I can't escape what's here. You can't escape it, he said simply, and you don't need to. You never did. Facing it is enough. Facing me, facing the ranch, facing yourself, that's all that's required. Everything else is noise. Her breath caught, chest tightening. And if I surrender? She asked, voice quick, overlapping the space between them. If I accept everything, does that mean I lose? Or does it mean I finally understand? You understand? He said, slow, deliberate. Surrender isn't losing. It's recognition. It's clarity. You stand here, not because I forced you, but because you choose to. That's power. That's survival. That's dignity. She exhaled, letting shoulders drop, hands loosen on the fence. Then, I surrender, she whispered, voice trembling but steady. Not because I have to, but because I see it now. I see you. And I see myself in the space I've earned, and I accept it. He nodded once, subtly, like a confirmation rather than a response. No words to soften, no speeches to embellish, just acknowledgement. The wind picked up, brushing dry grass across the ground, carrying dust into sunlight. She felt it brush against her face, a quiet reminder that life moved on whether she was ready or not. You're here, he said finally. Almost to himself, almost to her, and that's enough, more than enough. It's proof that the world didn't break you, even when it should have. That's rare. That's survival. I'm here, she said, voice low, deliberate, letting each syllable mark the space between past and present. I'm here. I won't run. I won't hide. I'll carry what I must, and I'll live with it. He tilted his head, sun catching the lines of his face, shadows deepening. Good, he said, because that's all that matters. The rest is just life. And life moves on, with or without consent. She let the silence stretch, filled with unspoken acknowledgement, the sun dipping lower, casting long golden shadows across the ranch. Every horse in the corral shifted, stamping, restless, but contained. Even the wind seemed to pause for a moment, as if to let the world witness the moment she had earned. I see it now, she said finally, voice soft, almost reverent. I see the weight. I see the space. I see everything, and I accept it. And that's enough, he said, voice carrying across the empty yard, steady and calm. Enough for you. Enough for me. Enough for this land that doesn't forgive, doesn't forget, but always endures. She nodded, the weight lifting slightly from her shoulders, chest loosening, hands finally relaxing. The sun kissed the horizon, golden light spilling across fences and fields, illuminating the quiet authority he wielded, without force, without spectacle. And in that light, she understood her place, not beneath him, not above, but beside, standing in acknowledgement of power, of memory, and of the choices she could finally make. No words needed beyond that. No speeches, no apologies, no declarations. Silence carried the meaning, and the ranch, the corral, the distant hills, and the fading sun all bore witness. She had returned, faced the cowboy, and accepted the life that stretched endlessly in front of her. The past was ash, the present real, and the future hers to step into, unbroken, aware, and quietly dignified.